If a show is popular at all, it'll go on, and on, and on. And sometimes you need to add something to spice things up, or an actor ends up impressing you. No matter how it happens, a lot of sitcoms add new characters to the cast. And it has mixed results. Sometimes it can result in a great character, and other times it can result in the exact opposite. One of the best character additions in a sitcom came from Parks and Rec. In Season 3, the show added Ben and Chris to the main cast. After they debuted at the end of the show's second season, they replaced main character in Seasons 1 and 2, Mark Brandanowitz, which was definitely a good move. Mark was an easily forgettable character. Out of all of the main characters, he was the most boring and didn't really have anything interesting about him. And that's abundantly clear when you look at an episode like The Camel, where the characters each make something that they think should be the new mural for Pawnee. And each character's idea, or how they make or get it, shows off their personality. And Mark doesn't make one that shows his personality. He just comes in halfway through the episode and makes one with mass appeal and no personality. Because, in all honesty, he doesn't have much of a personality to show off. He was meant to be one of the show's comedic straight men. A type of character where a lot of their comedy comes out of their reactions to what the other characters around them do. And during this season, this role is mostly filled by him as well as Anne. However, Anne is a lot more entertaining. One reason is because she spends a lot of her time with Leslie, or other interesting characters, properly using her as a comedic straight man, giving her a lot of opportunities to react to the strange things the other characters say. And she also still has a personality. She's still an interesting character who you care about, and she's able to be funny on her own. Meanwhile, Mark doesn't have much of an opportunity to have good reactions to anything that happens around him, because he usually isn't in the episode much, and a lot of his time is spent with Anne, making it two straight men talking. And even if he is put in a story with characters like Andy or Tom, they don't really give him any interesting or funny reactions, while Anne's reactions always lead to funny, well-delivered lines and good facial reactions. And he doesn't have any personality on his own, aside from kind of feeling like a Jim wannabe. The same snarky attitude and carelessness about his job, but lacking the charm and interesting character traits Jim has. On the subject of Jim, the relationship between him and Pam shows that you can have a relationship between two comedic straight men and make it work. Because that is the function of Jim and Pam in a lot of episodes of The Office. To be the comedic straight men reacting to the weird things that Michael, Dwight, or anyone else does. However, their relationship works because they both still have a lot of personality and goofy qualities, making it so in some situations Jim can be the straight man to Pam, and in other situations Pam can be the straight man to Jim. It's still good to give your straight man character some over-the-top qualities to keep them interesting. Their relationship also works a lot better than Anne and Mark's because they spend a lot of time building it up and focusing on the drama that leads to it. Because once Jim and Pam get together, the relationship isn't meant to be the thing you need to continue watching the show for, wondering if they'll stay together. Because once they get together, you know they'll stay together, and when they tried to do a storyline where you worry about their relationship in Season 9, it failed horribly. However, Anne and Mark got together way too early to do anything like this. But maybe Anne and Mark weren't meant to be the show's primary couple that keeps viewers coming back. But Mark was supposed to be the quote-unquote good guy we wanted to see Anne end up with after she broke up with Andy. And they're given a decent amount of focus early on in the show. However, it seemed like Mark was given a lot less prominence in the second season, because his only real source of relevance was his and Anne's relationship, while Anne still had other aspects to her outside of her relationship with Mark, like her friendship with Leslie, giving her more relevance in a lot of episodes. Mark didn't really have much else to do. Sometimes he'd be involved in a subplot with some characters who aren't Anne, but it never really felt like he added much. And when his relationship with Anne ended, he left the show too. Ben and Chris were brought on for a few purposes. One was to give Leslie a love interest, after her relationship with Mark was shot down and her relationship with Dave ended pretty quickly after it started. The relationship with Ben was very well written because there were clear mutual feelings between them early on, but it took them a while to get together and stay together. However, it wasn't because they would almost get together and have a fight or anything like that, which can work but can get tiring if written poorly or done too much, which is why Friends took a 6-year break from the Ross and Rachel relationship. So instead of going that route, it was instead to protect both of their careers and futures, with Ben being Leslie's boss already causing some drama and fear of people finding out, and then Leslie getting the opportunity to run for city council, making their relationship an even bigger threat to her career, leading to them needing to break up, and when they do finally get back together, it's not an easy thing to do. Ben has to give up his job for her, and by then you're happy to see them stay together. Sure, there's some slight conflict here and there, but nothing that makes you feel like their relationship is on the line. And they've been through enough that this relationship being stable is what you want to see at this point. Ben, like Mark, was meant to be another comedic straight man, and he also has a lot of great reactions to things that Leslie does. But on top of that, he is his own character. He isn't devoid of interesting traits. He gets nervous about being on the media. He's a nerd. He gets depressed when he doesn't have a job. He has an older brother, younger sister relationship with April. He has complex feelings on little Sebastian. He can overreact to certain situations. He has an interesting backstory, and more. These are the kind of things that make him a good character. Things that make him someone funny and interesting that we enjoy watching. While he is still a comedic straight man, he still has a lot of interesting traits and aspects about him. He was able to be a great match to Leslie, being a straight man to react to her over-the-top moments, but can have his over-the-top moments too. They had a relationship that had a lot of comedic potential, but a lot of heart as well, because while the relationship was very funny, above all else, you felt that they cared about each other. And you could see it in great moments like the ending of Bowling for Votes.
I'm sorry? What did you just say?
Just ignore him. He's being a jerk.
I said she's a bitch.
Oh my God!
When Mark left, they also needed to give Anne a new love interest. That's where Chris comes in. Unlike Ben though, Chris is the craziness to Anne or Ben or anyone else's straight man performance. Unlike Anne and Mark's relationship, which was uninteresting because it was two straight men and one of them had pretty much no personality, this relationship was Anne as the straight man and Chris as the over-the-top, funny, crazy, interesting character. And this relationship was another one that did a good job keeping the audience invested, as they only dated for a little bit, broke up, and got back together, and even though they were broken up for a long time, it didn't get tiring, because they took a break from focusing on it for a few seasons and had both Anne and Chris date other people, like Tom and Jerry's daughter, respectively. Ben and Chris's introductions is when I feel the show really found itself. While season 2 was pretty good and definitely an improvement over the first, it still felt like the show was trying to find its footing. Once Ben and Chris were added to the cast, it felt the show's new post-season 1 tone and the show's new cast and everything that made the show its own was finally found out. And these new additions not only replaced a lackluster character, but also became important central parts of the show's story. I think the main reason these introductions worked is because they felt crucial. These characters were needed to fill in certain roles that kept the show interesting, and they came in with interesting, fully realized personalities. However, those points bring us to the bad of additional characters. Season 8 of The Office introduced Nellie, and Season 9 introduced Pete and Clark to the main cast. While the show has had other character introductions in the past, both good and bad, these three stand out as my least favorite additions to the show. They suffer from poor character writing, but in different ways. Pete and Clark suffered from being extremely underdeveloped characters. Clark is slightly weird and perverted, and Pete is nice, I guess? That's about the extent of their characters. While Clark didn't really do much for the overall show aside from sit in two different desks, Pete at least had a little bit better luck as he got to date Erin. which is one of the worst storylines in the show. They made us wait multiple seasons for Aaron and Andy to get back together, finally brought them together, made Andy go through hell just to get his job back, and after all that, they wrote Andy out because of The Hangover Part 3, but instead of making the reason for him leaving something likable, like, I don't know, maybe the retreat we were told he was sent on between seasons, they really couldn't have pushed that back to a few episodes later. They instead decided to make him unlikable, making him leave his girlfriend and his job behind for months, leading to a relationship with Aaron and Pete beginning. This is an extremely annoying story because not only are they changing a character, making him do something he'd never do in order to kill off a relationship that had been developing for seasons, they also replace it with a relationship that never gets developed. We never really get much of an idea of Pete's personality and don't see enough of him and Aaron's relationship to really understand why they like each other or get attached to them as a couple. Earlier, I called Mark a wannabe Jim. That's also what Pete is. The only difference is that this time the show acknowledges it.
They're like the new Jim and Dwight.
But he's again basically Jim, without any of the interesting aspects of Jim. He doesn't have any interesting quirks like Jim's love of pranks, and we didn't have to watch him have a long struggle to be with the woman he loves like Jim did. Sure, like Pam, Aaron has a boyfriend, but he's gone most of the time. She breaks up with him as soon as he gets back, and the lead up to their relationship is so much shorter than the lead up to Jim and Pam's relationship. Their entire relationship begins in less than a season, while we had to wait 3 seasons to see Jim and Pam finally get together. There's no build-up, and things like the moment when she kisses him in Couples Discount don't feel earned. So these characters suffer from being severely underwritten and underdeveloped. Nellie suffers from a different problem. That being that she was simply just unlikable. Her introduction after the whole Florida thing is that she decided to just take Andy's job while he's gone. And in one of the show's most frustrating episodes, everyone just takes the side of this person they just met over the guy they've known for 5 years.
Angela? Doc Andy's pay $100. On it!
We see Andy's life basically falling apart because of her, and this is before the whole Hangover 3 disaster, so Andy's still likable here. And that was the intention. We are supposed to like him here and root for him to get his job back, so we see Andy getting his life back on track and regaining control over the company. And what happens next? Does Andy kick out Nellie just like how Michael kicked out Charles Minor in that great scene at the end of the Michael Scott Paper Company arc? No. Instead, Nellie says to him, "Hey, I'm played by a famous person." So he hires her as a special projects manager, and she continues to work at the office for the rest of the show. And now we're supposed to like her, but it's kind of hard to like her after this whole story arc. And I think the writers knew that, so the next season was in damage control mode, forcing out-of-nowhere friendships between her and characters like Dwight, Pam, and Aaron. And it also seems like they were making Andy more unlikable on purpose to make the audience like Nellie more. But it just didn't work. At least for me. The more I felt like the writers were trying to make me like this character, the less I actually liked her. They also kept flip-flopping on how the other characters feel about her. They don't like her when she first takes Andy's job. They then don't really care about trying to help Andy once he tries to get his job back. The first episode of season 9, they all hate her again. Then the rest of the season, everyone except Andy seems to love her. And again, when they make everyone love her, it makes me like her less. Because it feels like the writers are trying too hard to make the audience like her. I feel like the reason the characters I talked about from Parks and Rec worked and the characters I talked about from The Office didn't were for 2 main reasons. First of all, the Parks and Rec characters were just a lot more funny and interesting. And second of all, they felt needed to finally nail down the show's tone and give it the identity it was struggling to find for the first 2 seasons. And while the Parks and Rec characters felt like they were added to bring the show into its prime, The Office characters felt like an addition that was desperately trying to make the show more interesting once it was already well past its prime.